So I just saw Pixar's Soul, and there were things that I really liked about it. There were also things that I didn't really like about it. This is a spoiler review because it's out on digital already. All of you have had the chance to see it. It'll be easier for me to talk about it if I can just talk about the spoilers, so yep, let's do it. One of my favorite aspects of this film would have to be the score. Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross did a great job composing, and I really loved the soundtrack during certain sequences. There's a really synthy song that they play a few times in the movie, and I really love the tone of that, especially in a Pixar film. I also really loved the design choices with the Jerry and Terry characters, and whenever we see those characters, there are plenty of other great atmospheric design choices. I really love how it looks when his soul's getting pulled out of his body as he's running through the subway. There's some really cool stuff in this movie. It just unfortunately doesn't take up very much of the movie. The rest of the movie just feels like your standard manipulative Pixar joint. There are items that need to be checked off the list to make the formulated narrative, and they certainly check those items off the list. But what really separates a good script from a bad script is not whether or not they use the checkbox formula. It is whether or not they care about how they get from one checkbox item to the next. Unfortunately, with most Pixar films, and especially most recent Pixar films, the method of getting from one checkbox to the next is merely just making shit up as you go along. The film establishes very clear rules like how souls need an Earth Pass for them to be able to experience life on Earth, and in order to make an Earth Pass, you would need to find your spark, which is the final stamp spot on your stamp thingy, but you can't give your unfinished Earth Pass stamp thingy to somebody else. It has to be an actual Earth Pass, and then you can give it to somebody else. So now the main character, in order to get an Earth Pass, has to help 22 find her spark. And once they give up on that, they say hi to the pirate hippie man who just opens a portal, and then they fall through, and now they're both experiencing life on Earth. So since the main character is now accidentally in the wrong body and 22 is in his body, they meet back up with the pirate hippie in real life who just happens to be a New York resident that is within a block radius of them, and he's like an actual person that can just casually go back and forth from the soul world to here, and he understands everything that's going on, and yeah. So the idea is to do some bullshit ritual so that he can get back in his body, but I guess a part of that ritual would mean that their souls go back up to Soulville first? And 22 is like, no, I haven't found my thing yet. I have to stay here on Earth to find my thing so that when I go back up and I have my thing, then I can come back here and find life. But I'm never going to find my thing, and I'll never be able to come back down here if I don't spend some time down here first. Basically, her soul needed to be on planet Earth for her to realize that she actually liked things like food. So early on, they have to explain why she wouldn't know that food tastes good before having a body on Earth.
All that stuff is in your body.
No smell, no taste.
Or touch.
Okay, so why can you see and hear then? Those senses are also in your body. Every single one of your senses that you have is just touch, if you really think about it. She's been around for like entire generations and like billions of fucking years or some shit, and she's never found her thing. So now she's like, oh, I'll finally find my thing if I'm like already on the planet here. But what doesn't make any goddamn sense about this conflict is that she's already on the planet right now. So clearly you don't need that thing to be on the planet. Like, if the dude's gonna do the ritual and bring you back up, then just come back down the same way you did before. What's the conflict? Why don't you just do the thing? Why don't you just do the thing you just did to already go back down? You already did that. The pirate hippie is constantly connecting people with their souls. Just jump in with them like you did with the main character. Apparently you don't even need a newborn child or a dead body for your soul to go into, because the main character went into the soul of the cat and then he just left, and then it was just a regular cat again. So she steals his body because she's like, I know I need to be on Earth to find my thing. It's not even that she's like attached to his body. Like, she could just take the fucking cat's body. They're just throwing in conflict without giving a shit about why the conflict's there. It's just there because it needs to be there because the script needs conflict. Clearly you don't need the stamp thing to be living life on Earth because you're doing that right now. Just do it the same way you did before. Just do the thing you already did. So anyway, Terry shows up and steals their souls because they broke the rules, and so the cat is like fine now and just the normal cat it was before, and the main character's body is like dead, I guess, which is weird because they introduced all these other fucking things like being in the zone or being a wandering soul that showed that your soul can leave your body and not necessarily necessarily lead to you literally dying or being unconscious and like fucking passing out while you're running. Like to the dude in the cubicle, he was just like miserable and lonely, and to the sports players, they were just like really focused. There's no consistency to anything. It's just things happen because the script needs this thing to happen at this moment, so it's just gonna happen, and that's it, whatever. Now, my favorite Pixar movie is Ratatouille, and I personally think it's pretty great. There's a really good moment from the film where Remy starts to control Linguini through his hair, and Linguini is like, how'd you do that? And Remy just shrugs his shoulders. And that's all you need to know about how things work in this universe. The movie very clearly understands that it's working with absurd concepts, and the characters don't know how it works either, and they don't need to. But then you have other Pixar movies like this where they equally don't give a shit about how things work, but instead of just admitting it, they pretend otherwise. And then when I point these things out, people give me shit because Pixar films are essentially Schrodinger's kids movies, where simultaneously the movie is so good and touches on such adult emotions and themes that it is no longer a kids movie, but it is also exempt from all criticisms with the script because it's a kids movie. You can't really have it both ways, but people tend to do this a lot with Pixar movies, which is rather fitting because Pixar scripts like to have everything both ways too. And I wouldn't really care as much about the rules of this film's universe if the film itself didn't insist that I care about them. Not only do they dedicate entire sections of the movie explaining how these rules work, but these rules are the entire justification for both the conflict and the characters. If I'm supposed to not care about the rules of this universe, then how can I possibly care about the conflict or characters? They are inseparably intertwined. Just don't worry about it. You're not supposed to give a shit about anything despite the movie simultaneously implying otherwise. I do still really love the character growth and perspective philosophy in the film. There are ideas within this movie that I really appreciated and connected with, but these ideas and themes that I love are not the whole movie. They are part of the movie, and the other part of the movie is how they get to each of these ideas and themes. I really love the barbershop scene where Joe, who is no longer in his own body, is now able to reflect on his relationships with other people. But to get to that scene, we had to do some stupid bullshit where, oops, I fucked up my hair. Why were you trying to do this in the first place? Your hair looked perfectly fine. There is zero reason why either of these characters should be doing this right now, but they're doing it anyway. So the main character is able to escape death by just jumping off the escalator, and that's fine, whatever. But then the Terrys and Jerrys say that the count hasn't been off for centuries, which is kind of weird because that implies that literally nobody wanted to not die for centuries. It's also kind of irritating that this film seems to be under the impression that your soul is like your brain. Like if a soul exists, it's not just like your brain, right? It doesn't really seem like his soul got transported into a cat. It seems like his entire life experience, personality, and memories got transported into a cat. Anyway, Joe and 22 are now back in the Great Before, and Joe's about to get banished to the Great After, so he'll like die or whatever, and they're like, oh, great job with getting 22 her Earth Pass, so that means that like the stamps were all filled in and all that. And Joe decides to be a dick and tell her that she has no purpose, and then she gets mad and throws her Earth Pass at him, so now he has an Earth Pass, so he can just go right back to just being in alive. So he goes to perform with Dorothea Williams, and we get a pretty good jazz sequence. I really love the color and lighting choices in this sequence. It's really great. I actually like it a lot. Then he realizes that his life isn't magically different after the show, and he goes back home and he sits at his piano and he looks at all the shit that 22 collected in his pockets, and he's like, man, maybe like life isn't really about what I thought it was. Like I said, I do really enjoy the character growth, and I really connect with the perspective philosophy parts. I was actually really enjoying this whole appreciate life sequence until they interrupted it by playing the same line that they played less than 15 minutes ago.
Maybe skywatching can be my spark. Or walking. I'm really good at walking.
Those really aren't purposes, 22. That's just regular old living.
So he plays some music by himself, and then he's back in the zone, like consciously this time. Like he was playing music at the audition earlier and he was in the zone, but in no moment did he wake up and like start talking to the weird pirate hippie man. But now things are different, I guess. Why wasn't he in the zone when he was doing his jazz performance that we just saw a few minutes ago? The answer is that the script didn't want him to go back to the zone at that moment, so he didn't. He needed to have a good show and then reflect reflect on his life, and then go back and solve his problems with 22. And yeah, I get that these beats are just items to be checked off the list, but a good script would take the same checklist and find interesting and creative ways to get there. Like him wanting to go back and help 22 could be seen as some sort of writing challenge to address. But they don't give a shit, so he's just back there because that's what they want at this moment, so it's just going to happen. So yeah, he's just able to go back to the fucking spirit world whenever he wants now, and since his soul is just his magic brain, he's able to retain all of the memories and experiences each time he swaps over, so he's like, yep, I know exactly what I was doing in my human form now that I'm a soul, and I know exactly what I was doing when I was a soul now that I'm in my human form. He's basically a fucking god now. So he finds 22 and convinces her that she's not useless and is like, yo, I'll give you my Earth badge. They're pulling the old I Am Legend card so that the main character sacrifices himself for the secondary character because he's just so noble. Even though there's quite literally no reason why he has to do this, she can just go to Earth the same way she did before. Get the pirate hippie to open another portal. Just fucking, why don't you do that? Do the thing you already did earlier in the same movie. So yeah, he's just killing himself now, which is weird because he's not even on life support like he was before. He was literally just playing fucking piano. He was in the zone. Like, you're just chilling playing piano right now.
But Joe, this means you won't get to...
It's okay. I already did. Now it's your turn.
Why? But Joe, if you give me your Earth Pass, then you won't be able to get back to your body, even though earlier in the film you just fucking opened a portal with the pirate hippie and got back to your body without the Earth Pass. There's nothing stopping you from doing the same thing again. So she takes his Earth Pass to start her life, even though she could have just done the same shit she did before. And he goes back to the escalator so that he can die for no reason. But Jerry shows up and is like, yo, we had a discussion and we think you're pretty cool, so you don't actually have to die. Yeah, we can just, yeah, you're fine. Just go back to Earth. Nothing matters. What the fuck? If you want to do the noble sacrifice ending, do that. You can't also do it so that he doesn't actually sacrifice himself and that nothing matters and that there's no stakes. Pick one. At this point, you might as well end the movie with the title saying, hey, remember all those old people on the escalator that were dying? Well, they actually got to go back and live their lives and never die too. Nobody dies ever. I just wish this script had like a little bit of restraint instead of just everything happens because it's on the checklist and nothing matters. It's so annoying. If you don't give a shit about how the story is woven together, then just do a bunch of fucking separate short films or something. The whole experience just feels so forced and fake and phony and manipulative. This is a factory movie made by a fucking factory. And although yes, the factory machine is very competent at making factory checklist movies, I personally prefer movies that have a bit more soul. Show me something that isn't so fake and manipulative next time, please. Now, despite being very critical of this film, I don't think it is a bad movie. It is just a very frustrating movie to me. And if there was nothing that I loved about this film, then I probably wouldn't be so frustrated. All things considered, I would call it good but not great. There was nothing particularly breakthrough about this film. Tina Fey was fun to watch. There were a couple jokes that I liked. It's basically like Inside Out meets A Christmas Carol, kind of. Anyway, this is a 6 out of 10. Bye.
Get out. Get some meat on those bones and come back.
Beta!
Eat a sandwich, you fucking twink.
Beta! Beta!